To look like Marina Mabrey has broken her silence finally about shoving Caitlin Clark.
I feel like you're trying to come fast because now they're talking about investigations and now you're terrified. Now you're scared. Now you're shook.
What made the situation even more controversial was how it was initially handled. The referees, despite being positioned to monitor physical contact, didn't react the way many expected. Thousands of fans in the arena immediately sensed the severity of the eye contact, yet the officials ruled it a common foul. That decision stunned spectators who had just witnessed what looked like direct contact to a player's face. The gap between what viewers believed they saw and what was officially called created instant frustration. In professional basketball, officiating decisions can shape not only the flow of a game but also public perception afterward. Here, that early ruling became a central talking point. People questioned how something so visible could be judged so lightly. The crowd noise began to swell, not just from excitement but from disbelief. Fans pointed toward the replay screens as the footage rolled again, convinced the evidence was obvious. Yet the whistle had already been blown, and the initial call had already been made. Clark's reaction during the stretch drew praise from many observers. Instead of dramatizing the moment, she stayed composed. She didn't collapse or exaggerate contact. She simply continued playing, even though the discomfort was visible. That composure reinforced her reputation as someone who stays focused under pressure. To supporters, it was proof of resilience. To critics, it was evidence that she didn't think the contact was severe enough to warrant outrage. Either way, her response became part of the narrative. Eventually, officials reviewed the play and upgraded the foul, acknowledging that the contact involved a wind-up and carried injury risk. The explanation came from Ashley Gloss, who clarified why the decision changed. But by the time the ruling was corrected, the emotional spark had already been lit. Delayed justice in sports rarely feels satisfying because the moment itself has passed. The crowd had already reacted. The players had already felt the tension. The atmosphere had already shifted. That delay mattered. In fast-moving games, timing is everything. When a decision arrives late, it can't undo what has already unfolded emotionally. And in this case, that lag created the perfect conditions for the next escalation. The initial contact was the spark, the delayed ruling was the oxygen, and what followed was the explosion that everyone remembers.
Quarter we go, they're trailing by 10. Keep an eye on her and JC Sheldon. Clark trying to back her down.
Clark is okay.
Sheldon, that was Clark, hitting her in the face. Clark is upset about that. Then everybody's upset about that. Marina Mabrey comes in. She decks Clark, tempers flaring on both sides.
What happened next didn't just intensify the moment, it changed the entire narrative surrounding the incident. After witnessing the eye contact and Clark's reaction, Mabrey stepped into the situation in a way that many viewers interpreted as deliberate escalation. Basketball is a physical sport, but there's a difference between competitive contact and intentional confrontation. As the play transitioned following a turnover, Clark moved up the court, focused on the next possession. Mabrey, however, shifted her path directly toward her. The collision that followed wasn't subtle. Mabrey used her body to check Clark to the floor with force that looked far beyond incidental contact. Spectators immediately reacted, their collective gasp echoing through the arena. It was the kind of moment where time seems to slow down, where everyone watching realizes simultaneously that something serious just occurred. Observers later analyzed the footage frame by frame. They noted positioning, angles, and momentum, trying to determine whether the contact could plausibly be accidental. Many concluded it didn't look that way. To them, it appeared calculated, a response to the earlier exchange rather than a natural basketball movement. That interpretation fueled debate across sports shows and online discussions. Some argued it was retaliation. Others insisted it was simply a hard play misinterpreted in slow motion. Regardless of which side someone took, the impact of the moment was undeniable. The game's energy shifted from competitive intensity to controversy. Teammates stepped in, words were exchanged, and officials had to restore order. These are the situations leagues try to avoid because they draw attention away from the sport itself and toward conflict. What makes this sequence so significant is how quickly perception can form. Fans don't just see what happens, they interpret it instantly. Within seconds, people had already decided whether they believed the shove was justified, accidental, or completely out of line. Once those opinions take root, they rarely change, even when new information emerges. And that's exactly what happened here. The play didn't just affect the scoreboard, it shaped how millions of viewers judged everyone involved.
The moment came in the third quarter after Fever guard Caitlin Clark was poked in the eye by Sun guard JC Sheldon while Sheldon was playing defense. This led to a brief scuffle between Clark and Sheldon. Actually, it led to JC just kept running up on. I watched the video again. I was like, why is she doing that? Clark is obviously trying to get some space away from her, and she made it worse, which prompted Connecticut veteran Marina Mabrey to come up and shove Clark to the ground. Is that what we're calling it? Because it wasn't a shove. It was, I'm going to drive my entire body into your body. That's what that was.
The moment Marina Mabrey finally broke her silence about the controversial shove involving Caitlin Clark, it instantly reignited a firestorm that had never truly cooled. For months, fans had been replaying that third-quarter incident from June 17, analyzing every frame, debating every angle, and waiting to hear what Mabrey herself would eventually say. When she finally spoke, people expected reflection, maybe even accountability. Instead, what they heard left many stunned and frustrated, because rather than taking responsibility, her explanation seemed to shift the blame back onto Clark. That response didn't calm tensions, it poured fuel directly onto them. The timing of her statement raised eyebrows as well. After staying quiet for so long, she suddenly chose now to speak, and that coincidence didn't go unnoticed. Around the same time, rumors began circulating about possible league review discussions and disciplinary considerations. Nothing official had been announced, but the speculation alone made her decision to talk feel strategic rather than spontaneous. Fans started wondering whether her words were meant to control the narrative before any formal ruling could emerge. In sports controversies, timing often speaks as loudly as statements, and this timing felt anything but accidental. Supporters of Clark saw Mabrey's remarks as confirmation of what they already believed, that the shove was intentional and unjustified. Critics of Clark, meanwhile, argued that competitive tensions can escalate quickly in high-stakes games. But even among neutral observers, the tone of Mabrey's comments became the main talking point. Instead of defusing the situation, her explanation seemed to underline why the incident had sparked such backlash in the first place. Across social media, discussions exploded again. Commentators dissected every sentence she said, highlighting phrases they felt revealed her mindset during the play. Some argued she sounded defensive. Others thought she sounded unapologetic. A few insisted she was simply being honest about her emotions in a heated moment. Whatever interpretation people chose, one thing became undeniable: her words ensured that the controversy would not fade quietly into the background. And that's what makes this situation so fascinating from a public reaction standpoint. In professional sports, silence can sometimes let outrage fade. But once a player speaks, their explanation becomes part of the story itself. In this case, Mabrey's statement didn't close the chapter, it reopened it wider than before. The debate shifted from what happened on the court to what she meant afterward. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't just about a shove anymore. It was about intent, accountability, and whether her explanation reflected competitive passion or something more troubling.
Marina Mabrey comes out of nowhere and chucks her to the floor. Now let's watch this in slow motion. Here, JC Sheldon is guarding Caitlin, swipes her in the face. There's one. Going for the ball, swipes her in the eyeball. Caitlin's gonna have to start wearing goggles. And then Caitlin pushes her off of her, like, why are you still in my face? Marina Mabrey, bat out of hell, chucks Caitlin Clark to the ground.
The aftermath proved that moments like this rarely stay contained within the lines of the court. Once the game ended, the discussion moved into studios, podcasts, and social platforms, where analysts and fans alike dissected every second. In today's sports culture, a single clip can circulate worldwide within minutes, and that's exactly what happened. The replay spread rapidly, drawing reactions from people who hadn't even watched the game live. Suddenly, the incident wasn't just a game highlight, it was a global talking point. Debates formed almost instantly. One side argued the play represented excessive aggression that should have drawn harsher punishment. Another insisted it was being blown out of proportion because of Clark's star status. A third group focused less on blame and more on what the situation revealed about officiating consistency and league standards. Each perspective gained traction, creating parallel conversations happening at the same time. What makes controversies like this so enduring is that they touch on bigger themes than a single play. They raise questions about sportsmanship, competitive psychology, and how leagues manage discipline. Fans don't just watch games for scores, they watch for stories. And this moment delivered a story filled with tension, personalities, and unresolved disagreement. Even months later, the incident still sparks discussion whenever highlights resurface. That's the mark of a truly viral sports moment, it refuses to disappear. New viewers discover it, old viewers revisit it, and each replay invites fresh interpretations. Some people see proof of unfair targeting. Others see proof of how quickly tempers can flare in elite competition. Ultimately, what happened serves as a reminder of how thin the line can be between intensity and controversy. Professional athletes operate at emotional extremes, where adrenaline, pride, and pressure collide. Most of the time, that produces thrilling competition. Occasionally, it produces moments that everyone keeps talking about long after the game ends. And that's why this incident still lives in conversations today. Not just because of the shove itself, but because of everything surrounding it, the reactions, the rulings, the statements, and the debates that followed. Some plays decide games. Others define narratives. This one did both, ensuring it won't be forgotten anytime soon.
Now after this, you guys, of course, the referees are going to review the play because that's a lot of contact going on right there. That's a lot of unnecessary contact. That's a lot of non-basketball contact happening during this play, right? So the 3 referees that I like to say, they got them straight out of Sephora because I don't think these referees have ever refereed a professional basketball game in their life. They took these referees, they were at the monitor, they looked at it for, I'm not even exaggerating, you guys, like 15 minutes. 15 minutes they are watching this play over and over.
To really grasp why this incident exploded into such a massive talking point, you have to rewind to the exact sequence that triggered everything. The play began with J.C. Sheldon defending Clark closely, applying intense pressure while trying to force a turnover. Tight defense is normal in professional basketball, especially when guarding a high-impact scorer. But what happened next crossed into a gray area that instantly drew attention. As Clark maneuvered with the ball, Sheldon's hand came up and made direct contact with Clark's face, her fingers striking near the eye. The contact wasn't subtle, it was forceful enough that Clark reacted immediately. Her hand flew up instinctively to cover the spot, a natural reflex when someone's eye is hit. Pain reactions are hard to fake in real time, and observers could see that she felt it. The sequence unfolded quickly, yet every detail mattered. Clark then pushed Sheldon away, not in aggression but in a reflexive attempt to create space after being struck. It was the kind of split-second reaction most players would have in that situation. What stood out, however, was Sheldon's demeanor immediately afterward. She didn't appear concerned or apologetic. She carried herself as if nothing unusual had happened. That lack of acknowledgement became a focal point for viewers analyzing the footage later. In sports, body language can speak louder than words, and her composure suggested she didn't expect consequences. Meanwhile, the arena atmosphere began shifting. Fans sensed something had crossed a line, even before officials made any ruling. The tension wasn't just about the contact itself, it was about how casually it seemed to be treated in the moment. Then, within seconds, the situation escalated further. Teammates moved closer, voices rose, and the emotional temperature of the court spiked. The play had already drawn attention because of the eye contact, but the reactions around it made clear this was no ordinary possession. Observers watching live could tell that whatever happened next might define the narrative of the entire game. Moments like these show how quickly a routine basketball sequence can transform into a flashpoint. One instant, it's just defense. The next, it's a confrontation that everyone is talking about. And once the line is crossed, it becomes almost impossible to rewind the clock. The tension lingers, the crowd energy shifts, and every movement afterward carries more weight than it normally would.